Oh, 2 episodes in 1 week? What's the rush? They got somewhere else to be? Hey dolls, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 8, Episode 2. I know, 2 episodes in the same week. Did you miss me? I'm not sure why they release 2 episodes in 1 week, especially when it's an All-Stars season. They're usually shorter seasons to begin with. I guess we'll find out if there's a reason soon enough. So for now, I'd like to take a moment to welcome back to the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, Princess Stephanie. See you at the next live chat, doll. Seriously. Now, on to the important stuff. Jorge, drink me! Oh, thank you, Jorge. What is this? A Toronto Island iced tea? There's a lot of sludge on the bottom, which was the name of my fringe play. Let me give this a sip. Yummo. I love a sludgy bottom. Who knew? Okay, let's get to it. Well, the queens kicked this episode off by bidding a fond farewell to MBH, but as hard as it was for them to all get over the first elimination of the season, they got down to the important stuff right quick. And by that I mean who voted for who. Kahana kicked it off by saying that she had picked Monica to go home because, well, Darian was on her team and she wasn't about to vote for a teammate. Fair enough. As for whose lipsticks were in the black box, Darian got the honors to count the votes, and much to her chagrin, it was far from a landslide vote. Monica got the majority, but Darian still got 4 votes. Naturally, MBH voted for her, but so did Candy, Lala, and James. They all admitted that Monica's emotional appeal to the Untucked Lounge last week touched their hearts, and, well, they wanted to at least try to save her. Well, all of them except James, who just wanted the extra closet space. I'm sure that's a fat joke about Darian's wardrobe. No? To her credit, Darian told the other queens that she bore them no ill will for how they voted, but privately, she was starting her grudge list, and Candy, Lala, and James were all on it. And suddenly it was season 6 all over again. Hey, once a mean girl, always a mean girl. I'm just going to say. Of course, the queens also talked about the fame game element. They were thrilled that there was a second way to win, but I have to say James had the right idea. As great as the 50K was, 200,000 was way better, and it comes with a crown. Way to keep your eye on the prize, James. Is it just me, or does James out of drag look like George Santos? Out of drag. Oh, gee. The next day in the workroom, Ru showed up with this week's Maxi Challenge. The queens would be performing a sketch in the new comedy show RDR Live, a dragged-up spoof of Saturday Night Live that would not only have the queens performing comedy skits, but they would be performing them live on camera. One take. Needless to say, the queens were gagged. Right away, they got down to reading the scripts and assigning the roles. The first sketch was a Michelle Visage-obsessed coffee talk style show that Alexis and Darian snapped up. Sketch 2 was a commercial spoof for an all-girls landscaping service that Jessica and Jimbo were all over, with Mrs. Kasha Davis as their satisfied customer. That can't be easy. Now, you may want to sit down for this shocking piece of news, but Candy Muse put her foot down and said she wanted to do the opening host monologue. I know I'm gagged. Maybe because she could shine solo, or maybe so she wouldn't have to share the stage with anyone else. Either way, no one challenged her on it. These queens aren't stupid. They know Miss Muse doesn't play well with others. Lala and Heidi wanted the news desk anchor roles, but then so did Naysha Lopez. But for some reason, she acquiesced and let Heidi have it, although she wasn't happy about it. They never are. All that was left was Kahana nabbing the role of Pussy Jones, a feline guest on the news desk, and, well, James playing a doctor in the cold opening sketch, along with Naysha. James and the rest of the queens who were in the cold opening sketch got down to it. Because Naysha didn't get the role she wanted, she was going for broke in this scene by being as over-the-top as she could, but in reality, she was more distracting than entertaining. Thankfully, James offered to help Naysha, and by help, James meant change everything she was doing. Thank God. Jimbo's background in theater meant that she wasn't nervous about filming her scene with Jessica in one take. She also didn't seem to have any concerns one way or the other where Jessica was concerned. Hey, as long as she doesn't suck, I guess that's all Jimbo cares about. Of course, there was some moments of tension for some of the queens. Okay, they were mostly caused by Candy Muse, but since most of the queens couldn't understand what she was saying, no one was really bothered. Another one. Thankfully, Ru interrupted the queens with one of her workroom visits, and this time she brought a guest, Drag Race superfan and former star of SNL, Bobby Moynihan. They met with Jimbo and Jessica first, who they thought had great chemistry together. Must have been all that golden shower talk. Bobby also thought that Jimbo and Jessica were the Bert and Ernie of prostitutes. It must be those fists up there. Bobby suggested that they work on that dichotomy to give their scene layers, because if there's one thing slutty horticulturalists are known for, it's their layers. The cast from the news desk was next to visit Ru and Bobby, and I'd be lying if I didn't say Kahana wasn't feeling a little bit triggered, because Bobby was a guest judge on the episode of Drag Race Season 11 when Kahana was sent home. Touch all the skin. But to be fair, that wasn't Bobby's fault. Seriously, Kahana sucks so bad my ears are still popping. You hear it? Ru also suggested that Heidi read the news with her signature whistling S's. I thought that was good advice. By the way, extra points to those of you who recognize Bobby Moynihan's use of the Galaxy Quest line, "Explain it to me, as you would a child." Just love Galaxy Quest. As the queens got ready for the runway, Naysha, Candy, and Kahana talked about how emotional last week's voting was. Naysha said that her next vote would be based on which of the bottom queens she'd want to see more from. That's fair, I suppose, as long as you're not one of the bottom queens. Have I said too much? Lala took a moment to strike up an alliance with Heidi. The only thing was that Heidi was already in an alliance with Candy and Jimbo. Not that she told Lala that. I have to admit, I'm proud of Heidi playing the odds and hooking up a safety net for herself with Lala. I just hope it doesn't end up biting her in the padded ass. Seriously. And then it was time for the main stage. Ru was stunning in that purple strappy number. I loved it. Mostly because that purple strappy number was the name of my fringe play. Joining Michelle and Carson on the judges' table from the Black Ladies sketch show was the hilarious Robin Thede. Up first was RuPaul Drag Race Live. This followed the format of a typical SNL broadcast by opening with the cold scene. This featured James and Naysha as doctors warning against the global threat of drag race franchises to Heidi and Lala, the heads of the Center of Drag Control. James did a fantastic job, and I thought her accent was hilarious. Lala and Heidi fed off her energy beautifully as well. In fact, I thought they all did a good job, but unfortunately, Naysha's performance paled in comparison to everyone else's. Poor thing. She's so pretty. Then Candy opened the show with her monologue. I thought she did a solid job, and Mrs. Kasha Davis interrupting her to pitch sketch ideas was fun. Up next was Jimbo and Jessica's McCall Girls Gardening Service sketch, which was a little one note, but then they didn't write it. I thought they did well with what they had to work with, but Mrs. Kasha Davis popping in with her customer testimonial was a welcome addition. Plus, she looked hilarious. I have to say, I thought the best scene of the night was the RDR news desk with Heidi and Lala. They worked well together and seemed to have a lot of fun. My only complaint was that Heidi didn't whistle more of her S's as Ru had suggested. Kahana as Pussy Jones looked great, but her performance wasn't as OTT as I thought she should have been. If I were her, I'd have ended up on that desktop licking myself by the end of it. But then that's just how I roll. Meow. I have to be honest, I was prepared to dislike Darian and Alexis's House of Love with Tangerine and Margarita, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't great, but again, that's just down to the writing more than anything. Also, Alexis's ill-fitting breastplate was distracting. She couldn't get a fit tip from Jimbo. Michelle showing up like Babs did on Coffee Talk was a fun touch, but I still felt a little violated. All in all, I thought this was a fun maxi challenge all around. And then it was time for the runway. Category is Net Gala. Naysha was first in a spider web-like black lace gown, which I thought looked fabulous on her, so I totally gave her a Fingerdoo. I loved how James took the net theme and put it into her hairnet and hairspray, which I'm assuming was Aquanet. But that pink pussy loungewear was stunning, so I gave her a Fingerdoo. I wasn't a fan of Candy Muse's runway. I felt the proportions were off and it swallowed her figure, so I totally gave her a finger don't. MKD's butterfly extravaganza wasn't elevated enough for me. It was more costume than gala, so I gave her a finger don't too. Bless. Jimbo's ultimate influencer runway was haute couture at its best. Plus, it was a great interpretation of the net theme. It was so unique that I couldn't help but give it a finger do. Seriously, I thought that was good. Jessica's butterfly extravaganza look was cute, but it was another look that wasn't elevated enough to be on the All-Stars runway, if you ask me. Finger don't. Heidi's runway reminded me of vintage Comme des Garçons, but it took me a moment to see that the fabric was mesh. Still, I thought it was totally worth a finger do. Lala Ree's mesh gown was gorgeous on her from, well, the waist up. From the waist down, it needed panties. Still gave her a finger do. Kahana's blue ocean goddess was breathtaking, but I think it could have done without the cape. Still, she caught a finger do for me, I'm just saying. Darian's basketball court dress was okay. It wasn't my favorite. I mean, the color was too dark to actually emulate a basketball court floor like she was trying to do, and just hanging that net over her shoulder really wasn't reason enough for her to have it in the first place, so I gave her a finger don't. Alexis Michelle's gown was absolutely stunning, but I wish she hadn't lined so much of it. It made the netting hard to see. Still, it was a gorgeous way to end the runway show, so I gave her a finger do. Then Ru announced that the safe queens were Candy, MKD, Jessica, Lala, Darian, and Alexis. So they frigged off to the Untucked Lounge, where I'm sure Alexis found a way to make it all about her again. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. For the most part, they liked Naysha, but they didn't love her performance in the cold opening. On the other hand, the judges loved James's performance in the cold opening, and her runway was a huge hit with the judges as well. Jimbo's runway was an absolute hit with the judges, and her performance in the horse to culture scene was well received because of how well she played off of Jessica Wilde. I hope she thanks Jessica. The judges also loved Heidi's performance at the news desk, and Michelle loved her Rick Owens style runway. Okay, she thought it was Rick Owens. Whatever. Of course, Kahana's runway was a hit with the judges again, but the judges were left wanting more from her performance as Pussy Jones. Ru was hoping with a name like that she would have Pam Greered it up a bit more, and she wasn't the only one. Then Ru announced that this week's winner was Jimbo. I have to admit, I was a little surprised to hear that because I thought James had been the standout this week, but I wasn't mad at it. At least James was safe along with Heidi, which left Naysha and Kahana in the bottom. Poor Kahana. From the top to the bottom in 1 week? That just shows you how talented this cast is, I'm so serious. Back in the Untucked Lounge, Jimbo was congratulated for being the top all-star, even though the Safe Queens thought Heidi was going to be the top queen this week. See, I wasn't the only one. Needless to say, both Naysha and Kahana were upset. Naysha got emotional during her deliberation with Jimbo, and when she was back with the other queens, the waterworks continued. She didn't have a good reason as to why she should stay, just that she really wanted to. Personally, I thought a better argument for her staying would have been her trying harder in the acting challenge. Hell, James even gave her some great notes on how to sell that character she didn't want. Seriously. Kahana, on the other hand, had an ace up her sleeve. She'd won last week. If that's not worth some consideration, then why are we all here in the first place? Still, Kahana made a good point. She's not an actor, but she didn't complain about it. That's a dig at Naysha, right? I thought Robin Thede would have popped by to say hi to the queens, but no, apparently she didn't negotiate a meet and greet or something. I'm not really sure why she didn't visit the workroom, but how do you say no to something like that? It's Drag Race. They're drag queens. When's that ever going to happen again? Seriously. Back on the main stage, the secret lip sync assassin was revealed to be Jimbo's best friend, Pangina Heels. Immediately, I smelled another loss for Jimbo. Seriously, take a big whiff. They had to lip sync to Cyndi Lauper's She Bop, and although I love this song, it's not a dancey number, and that makes it hard to lip sync to. To be honest, I was expecting more from Pangina Heels. Don't get me wrong, she totally out lip synced Jimbo in my opinion, but she didn't seem to break a sweat doing it, and when the music died, Ru announced that it was in fact Pangina Heels who was this week's winner. That means that the cash tip of $20,000 is getting rolled over to next week. Someone could be winning $30,000. Or not. We'll just have to wait and see. Either way, you can practically hear the queen salivating. And then it was time for Pangina to reveal whose lipstick she had. Sadly, it was Naysha Lopez. She's the next queen to be entering the Fame Games. Oh, speaking of, this was MBH's Net Gala look. Stunning. I have to admit, I'm sorry to see Naysha go. She's a beautiful queen and a Miss Continental winner. I was just hoping to see more from her. But just like on season 8, she got outperformed and, well, had to sashay away. So, what do we think? Were the right queens in the bottom? Did the right queen go home? Is there anyone who could be in trouble for next week? What do you think of Jimbo being the top queen this week? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And while you're down there, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. These are the 2 best ways to help support the Fingerdoo review. But if you really want to help support this channel, there are links to leaving a tip-er-doo, getting your own Wilma merch from my Redbubble store, or joining the Fingerdoo family on Patreon. It's all down in the description box below. Until next week, miss me! Mwah! Seriously, Jorge. So much drama in 1 week, 2 episodes. I'm not surprised Naysha went home. I mean, I know she's a Miss Continental winner, but that's a different kind of competition. Do you know what I mean? Like you prepare for those challenges and that runway and everything. You show up at Continental knowing exactly what you're going to do. With Drag Race, it's a hit or a miss. I mean, they let the queens know what the challenges are going to be, but they don't let them know what order they're going to land in. It's an easy surprise for anyone. I don't know. I'm hoping Kahana can pull it together. I feel like Darian hasn't redeemed herself. I feel like if Miss Kasha Davis, if next week isn't an acting or comedy challenge, she could be in trouble too. We'll just have to see. Seriously. I don't want the old queens to go home. They make me feel so young.